Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Before I start, I have to apologize for all the background noise. So if you watched my vlogs, you would know that I finished my final exams a while back. If you haven't, I'll link those videos up here so you can watch them. I sort of making a video about the textbooks that I used to study for finals. Now, I've got to say, I'm like a textbook hoarder. I for some reason love buying textbooks. I know it's pointless and useless. I have this almost like an addiction of buying textbooks. So I collect textbooks to be precise, but I have to admit that's a huge waste of money. I do not recommend doing that because there are so many books that I didn't even bother to open. So in this video, I'm only going to show you the books that I actually did end up using. This is just what I personally found useful, and it could be very different for you. Maybe you already have a book that you love, and in that case, you should definitely stick to that book. And obviously you don't have to buy any of these textbooks. You can download the PDF, I guess. So most of the time I ended up referring to guidelines when I was studying, and also my lecture notes and notes that I took down during my professorial appointments. So I would say those are like the main resources that I used. These are just additional stuff that I ended up referring, but I found useful. So without further ado, let's get started. Starting with medicine, this book I feel like is a must-have. I know it's huge and no medical student in the world would actually have time to go through this entire book, and to be honest, I actually had like a love-hate relationship with this book. I spent most of my medical school years trying to find an alternative to this book, but I unfortunately could not find anything to replace this. So in the end, I always ended up referring back to this book. And also, this is like the standard textbook so many universities recommend for things about management and stuff. I mostly referred to the guideline. Next textbook that I found pretty useful is this one. It's the Oxford Handbook. I feel like Oxford Handbooks are really useful no matter what subject you're studying for. This pretty much has almost everything that you need to be able to survive in a medicine world. I highly recommend this. This is probably like one of the few books that I don't actually regret buying. So yeah, I highly recommend this, and I feel like this is a must-have. Another book that is that I didn't use much for finals per se, but I found pretty useful is this little book. This is because I suck at reading ECGs. It's also one of those rare books that I don't regret buying because I used to have a lot of trouble reading ECGs, and I feel like this book did a good job of explaining all the basics. Again, that's just my opinion. There are plenty of other books out there, so you can check those out as well. Moving on to surgery. Now for surgery, unfortunately there aren't a lot of guidelines, and I struggled a lot with finding a good textbook for surgery, but whenever I needed to read about something, I ended up reading the Bailey and Love's textbook of surgery. I think it's called Bailey's and Love, or Bailey and Love's short textbook or something like that. It's a huge book. I didn't buy it, thank God. I actually liked reading that book, and I felt like it explains things really well. Again, if you don't like huge text, you probably wouldn't like that textbook, but since I did not have any other textbook that I really liked using for surgery, I always went back to the Bailey and Love, and in addition to that, I used this book a lot. Just like medicine, this one is really useful. This has pretty much everything that you need to survive in the surgery ward. Of course, this is not enough to study for your finals, so you definitely need to refer the books. So that's it for surgery. Honestly, I really struggle finding a good textbook for surgery. So if there's any book that you know of, something that you find useful, you're free to leave a comment down below. But for me, it was mainly this one and Bailey and Love's short practice of surgery, or whatever the name is. Moving on to pediatrics. Again, pediatrics is another subject that I struggled a lot with finding a good textbook. The recommended textbook is this one, the Illustrated Pediatrics books. I like this book, but I feel like Again, this is my personal opinion. I feel like this isn't enough. So what I ended up doing is, whenever I needed to refer something, I read from the Nelson's textbook. Again, it's a huge book and obviously no one has the time to read everything in it, but whenever you need to clarify something or read up on something, I feel like there's no better textbook than that. Again, it's my opinion, I could be wrong. If you know something, please write down, because I searched for years and years to find another text and couldn't find any. But the good thing about PEDS is that there are lots of guidelines available. So for management of almost all the important diseases and stuff, I ended up preferring college guidelines, which was pretty useful, again, because I was struggling with finding a good textbook to read. So this way I could, whenever I needed information about the disease itself, I could just read it from the Nelson or this one or this book, and then when it comes to management, I refer to those guidelines. Again, you can check the college website, they have all the guidelines, and also they have something called the standard treatment protocols. I ended up compiling everything and printing it as a book and referring to that throughout my pediatric appointment, and I found it pretty useful. Again, you can ask your consultants about how much you're supposed to know, because I feel like when you read guideline, it can be a little bit extensive and overwhelming, because there's a lot of info, and sometimes as an undergrad you don't need to know that much. But considering there isn't any other alternative or any other textbook, I'm so glad they have lots of guidelines, because I honestly don't know how I would have survived without those. Again, I think there are times that I refer to the Oxford Handbook of Pediatrics as well. To gynecology and obstetrics, the recommended textbook is 10 Teachers. I did not like those textbooks. I feel like they're pretty useless, to be honest. But I did end up using a lot for the guidelines. Again, just like PEDS, they have a lot of guidelines. Now moving on to psychiatry, which is the main text that I refer to this book. Again, this has all the basics you need to survive the psychiatry professorial. But of course, this is not enough. You have to know more than what's in this book. I don't remember what it's called, but it's like the main Oxford textbook of psychiatry, not the student's version or anything like the main text. I did not buy that book, I just had the PDF, but some of my groupmates did. They had like a photocopy of a huge book. I think it was like 3 parts or something, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if the ICD-11 is out yet, but I had the ICD-10 printed. That was pretty useful. I refer to that a lot, because obviously not only that they have all the criteria that you need for diagnosis, like in the beginning of every section there's like a nice explanation about all the psychiatric conditions and stuff, so I definitely loved using this. The ICD-11 is out. I think it's coming out this year, if I'm not mistaken. You might want to get the ICD-11 instead of the 10. I actually feel like all Oxford textbooks are really great books, so obviously this one too. Again, this is not something that you need, but it's pretty interesting to read this. And also this book is huge. This is the medicine textbook right here, and compared to that, the psychiatry one has a lot more pages. Again, all these textbooks that I showed you, those weren't my main study material. Those were things that I used in addition to the guidelines and lecture notes and other notes that I took down during appointments. I guess in conclusion, what I have to say is, you don't really need to buy a lot of textbooks, and these are like the only textbooks that I ended up using in my final year. That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video useful, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you still haven't subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. I will see you in my next video. Bye!